everyone. Welcome to the Star Wars Stuff Podcast. My name is Colin.
My name is Colin.
I'm Colin.
I'm Colin.
I'm Max Rebo.
And I'm also Colin.
And we are here to talk about Season
Max
3, Episode
Rebo.
4 of The Bad Batch, because that is what heroes do.
That's right.
All right, you guys ready to talk recruits? Let's do this.
I'm working on my Chewbacca costume right now. Yeah, no, we're missing Colin today. He is out and about. But we're all here from behind the paywall once again.
Sorry.
You missed us. Awesome. If you didn't, too bad. We are here to talk. And we had an amazing episode continuing Omega and Crosshair's story, continuing episodes 1 and 3 from earlier. I know going in just last night, I was thinking to myself, what story are we getting? Are we going to keep this momentum and continue with Crosshair and Omega? Or are we going to jump back to another quote-unquote filler, more like Spacer episode with Hunter and Wrecker? What were you guys expecting coming into today?
I was going in expecting this to be a Rex and Echo introduction episode, which we didn't get, but I was not disappointed at all. I really, really loved this episode. I thought it was a really good example to me of how to make a side quest not a filler episode.
Yeah.
Because really, like, the stuff that happened in this episode, like the storyline of it, didn't matter. Like the point A and point B of them crash landing and then eventually ending up meeting back up with Hunter and Wrecker, like that mattered. But what happened in between really has no lasting impact.
Right.
And I thought it was done super, super well. It didn't feel like filler. It was a lot of really cool little world building stuff. I was really happy with today's episode.
I when I loaded up the episode, I was convinced we were going to get like coin toss. Either it was going to be just, back to Hunter and Wrecker, maybe a touch of Echo and Rex, or it was going to be all Omega and all Crosshair.
Yeah.
And I was actually hoping for all Omega and all Crosshair because that is something I was so excited for with where we left off.
Yeah.
Because we leave off in the episode 3 with them debating stealing the Emperor's shuttle, not stealing the Emperor's shuttle, stealing a shuttle that's crewed by a bunch of stormtroopers and a commando officer, them escaping after being almost blown out of the sky, and learning that Omega's blood works in a special way. And we get a tie-up of all those points almost.
Yeah.
In a way that satisfies, but also isn't like, and cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Because we have an emotional cliffhanger, but that's it.
Yeah, which is a big one. But yeah, I honestly thought we were going back to Hunter and Wrecker. And something that I thought was really interesting about this episode is the fact that we already have them back with the batch now. Like, I was not expecting that. I was not expecting that to happen so fast. It makes me be like, I was expecting some more time. I was expecting Hunter and Wrecker. I was expecting maybe some filler. And like, I think Hunter's right to point out that this was a really good, like, it was a side quest, but it wasn't filler.
Well,
I don't want to jump to the end of the episode too quickly.
Sure.
So we'll let it marinate a bit, but absolutely. I know that hyperspace jump, I was fully expecting credits to run.
Oh,
When they left the planet.
Yeah.
No. Cap?
Yeah, no, I think what this episode makes me hopeful for is that maybe we're going to get that clones all banding together, attacking Tantus. Like, let's have everybody all together because now the batch is together. So you don't need to go on one more, go save so-and-so who's locked up.
Well,
hey, we still could. We still
could happen.
Planted that seed.
They did.
Because Omega was already like, yes, we're going back.
Exactly. So I'm really hoping that it's a setup for an assault. That'd be so cool.
Yeah.
If I can't have it the way Battlefront portrays it, I want it this way.
Yeah, absolutely. It was it really was good. And also I wanted to come in really quick. We had a little clerical error last week in our discussion. There was apparently the batch went to Darrow in season 1, not Tantus.
Which is pretty cool though.
I'm just dumb, I guess.
Apologies that Wikipedia made the weirdest retcon on Earth because it's the exact same topology.
Yeah.
Scorch was also head of security there, so apparently he got moved to the super epic cloning science division after that episode.
I'm just imagine being head of security, having your base infiltrated, and then not being shot.
And then getting promoted to be able to see the most important Imperial thing in existence.
Yeah. Arguably more important than the Death Star.
It's because they like his paint job. That's why.
Yeah, that's why.
You cannot deny the Riz.
You can't. You can't do it.
Yeah. It's to the
And
point where
continuing.
actually, quick tangent, his paint job, I found a thing in a game that looks just like it, and every time I'm in a game, I get a message from someone being like, oh my god, are you Scorch? Yeah.
Oh my
That's
god.
awesome.
I'll give you guys the brief on that after this. Yeah.
Please
It's-
All right.
But it's the same vibe everyone has every time we see Scorch on screen. We're like, Scorch.
Mhm.
Yeah, I will say there is nothing worse as a fan of wanting to see Fixer than the vertical gray line of the Camino of the like clone security
think
In
command.
like a
And I'm
dark
like-
shot.
It's
And
not.
you're like, nope.
Yep.
Is this weird lighting? Is that actually him? No, it's just great.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Mhm.
I think I said it last week. At this point, I can't even let myself hope that we're
Yeah.
going
No.
to see any glimpse of actual Scorch or the rest of Delta Squad being Delta Squad as we know it,
Yeah,
because it just makes him only being there as eye candy that much more disappointing.
It
Yeah.
does.
yeah.
No.
Especially following that, what the producer said a few
Mhm.
weeks back when asked about the Republic Commando and other characters, and she was like, "Yeah, you'll see more of Scorch this season. As for other Republic Commandos, I can't confirm or deny, but who knows if we'll, what future stories will tell." Which
Yeah.
was
Which
both,
implies
like,
not in this story.
Mhm.
Yeah.
just the ultimate like can't say no marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So but
Tragic.
Could be trying to divert from Gregor, though.
could
Maybe.
I could
Good.
totally see us seeing more Gregor.
I mean,
Yeah. we
considering
need an
the
explanation
position
of
he's in
how
at
he
the
went
end.
from here to Rebels.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we saw him get rescued last
Yeah.
season. Yeah, it was,
Yeah.
it was the end of season one.
Season
It was
one.
Season
two
one.
seasons ago. They went
Yeah,
to Daro to
Yeah,
save
very
Gregor.
end of season one.
Because
He still has a lot more marbles to lose, though.
His rescue is
Yeah.
the first shot we see of the TK concept.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's not a stretch to hope or assume that this season we're going to start to find out where Rex and Echo or any clones who are working to get other clones out are actually dropping
Yeah.
people off.
Yeah.
And they may come back for that rebellion that we're all hoping for.
Mhm.
But I could totally see us seeing more Gregor,
Yeah.
that being the commandos that just trying to divert our attention from.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Watch it be that there's some like special location on Camino that they're returning to. Like
Ooh.
everyone thinks Camino's uninhabitable, but
Yeah.
they're just
I
living
mean-
still on Camino.
We know that Tapoca City got destroyed, but we don't know what else is on Camino. We've never
Yeah,
seen
hopefully.
anywhere else on Camino.
Mhm.
It's the same kind of like logic where we're like we've been to Tatooine how many different times in the Star Wars franchise, and how much of Tatooine have we seen?
4 cities.
4 cities, all of them apparently within 1,000 miles of each other.
Yeah.
And 1,000 by 1,000 grid. Yeah,
So episode
that's smaller
opens-
than the U.S.
yeah. It's-
We've stayed inside the middle.
we have the opening of the episode. We see a really interesting look of hyperspace with like smoke and there's fire and the shuttle's like coming apart.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's cool.
which
So
like,
is-
we all kind of knew was happening. It wasn't the best conditioned vessel. There was an open hole in the glass canopy that Omega's under. From the original
So,
crash, and they're going
Colin's
right.
not here to yell at us and say, don't put logic into Star Wars.
Go do it.
Let's do it.
Are we too, like, what does that mean about hyperspace, you know? Is
Well-
there some, like,
Just
hyperspace?
going too fast.
We've sort of had explanations in the past. I don't know if any of them are canon anymore, but that hyperspace is kind of like interdimensional travel.
Yeah.
So
Is
what
there
there's-
oxygen there? Is there something that can burn?
I don't
And
know.
or maybe it's just stuff leaking from the ship, similar to in space when it burns off.
So hyperspace is really weird because the way we see it in Star Wars differs so much from how other sci-fi handles faster
Yeah.
than light travel.
Yeah.
Because the way hyperspace seems to work in Star Wars, aside from it being plot driven and how long it takes to get from point A to point B, but it's very much a I think you were saying what you're saying is correct. Like, it's out of the space technically.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
not in our dimension.
Yeah.
So it's possible that because think about how long like there is like distance-wise between like planets in the galaxy. But we learn that some vehicles are faster in hyperspace than other vehicles are in hyperspace. And we know that, like, I think in one of the books they mentioned that there's a hyperspace jump that's only like 46 minutes to get from one corner of the galaxy to another across the hyperspace lane.
Whoa.
And I'm like, that is a huge distance
That's
to cover in
incredible.
under
Yep.
an hour.
Yeah, and
It almost seems like wormholes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, so
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
I am trying to get into the High Republic books right now, and the first one there is a special character who basically, like right now, as in Star Wars as we know it on screen and stuff, it's always droids who calculate coordinates for
Or
the navigation
computers or
and
whatever.
routes through hyperspace.
Yeah.
But in this book, this character, they can actually they go into like a mind trance and can like find routes through hyperspace that
Yeah.
are new and different and allow these ships to jump from point A to point B in ways that like the Republic can't,
Mhm.
in less time or
Interesting.
less distance or whatever. And I think that ties in really closely to the idea of hyperspace lanes, which
Yeah.
we've seen for a long time in Legends and in canon as far as galactic maps go.
Yeah.
So I think talking about it like wormholes is a really good way to think about it. Like it's not, and that ties in again with not thinking about it like in our dimension,
Right.
different ways to go from point A to point B.
Right.
The thing that doesn't click for that is just going off of Han's original like explanation of hyperspace. He's like, you got to calculate it. We're gonna hit a star cluster, or
Right.
it made it seem like a very much you aren't going from point like there's a through lane where if you don't not careful, you're gonna hit something that is within
Yeah.
our current space, I guess.
Yeah.
Well,
But
I think part of that commentary then is probably the fact that there are predestined. If you enter at this point on this vector, you'll end up at this point to make a transition jump to the next point. But the idea being, if your degree is not like to the, let's say, like fourth decimal point exact, you could be off by hundreds of thousands of miles.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same way that, like, you know, if you have a laser pointer here on Earth and you point it at the moon, you can see a dot on the moon, but the dot on the moon you're seeing is huge in comparison to the actual point being emitted by your laser diode.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the same kind of like, you know, just one point actually fans out like this, and across the distance of time, that is huge distance you can end up in.
Yeah. I
And-
mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and then like the way Hunter was talking about how they had Jedi and Force users finding hyperspace routes. That's how the Chiss navigate. In
That's
the
how,
Thrawn books.
yeah. That's like the Skywalkers and the Chiss.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the episode, though.
Yeah, back to the episode.
I still think that even if it's wormholes and all that, having a hole in the ship when you get into the upper atmosphere, still not going to work.
Yeah.
It's
Still a
just
fun scene though.
But a great scene.
You like it?
Yeah, fun scene. We see the inside of that ship, and I know back in Clone Wars, we have a very similar ship, and we always wondered how on earth you get into the pilot's cockpit.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like so weirdly located.
How do I?
So
Where do I?
get the
what do I-
elevator and then enter from the rear, and then it was cool seeing the inside of the ship, and cool seeing Crosshair's seat like flip out behind him so he could get on the controls.
Yeah.
And eventually they do land with style. In
Any landing you walk away from is a landing.
yeah. Star.
Sorry, I'm just gonna add it in because Colin's not here to tell me not to. But those rock formations,
Oh,
like,
no.
let me just calm the mountains.
They were so cool.
They were
They
cool.
were cool.
I liked them.
I liked
but
them a
they
lot.
certainly
You just shot them down immediately. We watched
They
that, and
don't
she was
look-
like, "Ah, "Those are horrible." And I was like,
If
"Oh,
anything, they look like fjords.
Wait, but how don't they
yeah,
work?
There you go.
Okay, dude, they're like sticking out like at an angle as though they've been carved out by
Maybe the
something.
rocks
in the
are
You
middle.
don't know how
They
those
have.
tectonic plates
there a
work on
river?
that planet.
That could have
don't.
You only know how they work on Earth.
wind erode rock.
Sideways. Yeah.
I
But like
would
a
also-
whole range of them?
I
like
mean,
a whole
there's-
range of them,
yeah,
and they clearly
whole
look like
edge
they're
of
That
the
planet could have
days
existed
of
for
like,
billions of
I
years.
don't know.
Nobody
I
knows
mean,
what
the
that
only
don't
reason
know that
why
planet's
the
history.
Sierra Nevada looks the way it does is because of glacial melt and glacier movement. So it's possible these are glacier formations.
Glaciers don't cut like that,
Yeah,
though.
just
They
Like
could if
they
they were.
did.
They
But
could
what
if
if
they
they
were
did?
not water ice.
Yeah.
Space ice glaciers.
Well,
Nice.
anyway,
I mean,
all this
methane
aside,
when it's cold enough forms ice crystals. So
that's true.
So anyway, they
Anyway.
land.
they land. They crash land.
So they
But they
land,
land.
and we get Crosshair. You know, he's like, I found coordinates to a town, and they go over, and we see TKs. I think for the first time we see TKs doing patrols in a city instead of our regular clones,
Yep.
and we see a very similar Imperial garrison base that we saw in season 1.
Yep.
And we're seeing TKs. We see a TK wearing goggles.
Goggles!
over his helmet.
They were so
He's got
cool.
like
Okay.
patrol goggles.
Okay, the poncho things looked dope,
They did.
Yes.
Yes.
but how and why is he wearing goggles? Because the normal helmet should seal off the wearer.
And it has the same shape of.
He just thought they were cool. Kind of like
Yeah.
people who wear those funny sunglasses inside.
So
There you go. Yeah.
one,
Or
you
like
can
an
you can
avatar.
Yeah.
never discount the rule of cool when it comes to sci-fi.
That's
Yep.
right.
Two, if I'm trying to come up with an in-universe possible explanation, what if they, are a visual enhancement upgrade that he just put a strap on?
They could be, and if that's the case, then clones have a way cooler solution to that.
Yeah, they do.
Macro
Yeah.
binoculars and the helmet, way cooler than steampunk
Wait,
goggles.
Rangefinders.
what if his visor got like shot out or something, and so now he's like,
Just
oh no,
like-
I don't have time. I'm just
Cool.
gonna throw some goggles
Yeah,
on.
that's
That'd
cool.
be funny. It
That
could
would
be because the poncho looks very similar to some of the garb we saw in Solo on, for the Mud Troopers.
Yeah.
Like, what if he's a first iteration Mud Trooper? They also had similar goggles for the standard Imperial Army.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's something I was
Yeah.
thinking about too.
But
Seeing
there
all the
wasn't
dirt,
a visor under the Mud Trooper goggles.
or the extra
No.
like World War II plate and stuff. But
Right.
Or what if he
Yeah.
has a really specialized eye prescription and they don't make it in visors, and so he had to get his own
Ooh.
goggles and put his eye prescription in.
I'm calling it now. Complete headcanon. He's the only TK we're gonna ever see that's not confirmed to not be an alien.
Ooh.
Ooh,
okay.
So you could be an alien under it that needs an extra thing to
There
we
make
go.
everything work.
there we go.
If that TK is wearing prescription glasses, does that mean TK is related to every other Star Wars glasses wearing character in canon?
Yes. So it turns out that's
Isn't-
Dr. Pershing's dad.
Yeah, that's Dr. Pershing's dad. That's the theory.
You got the same.
Everyone that wears glasses
We
is
got his mom. We got his dad. Somehow he's gonna end up
solved it.
there, or she's gonna go there.
we see Omega and Crosshair. They need to get into new. They can't
New
walk
clothes.
around looking like convicts. And we see they try to get off, and we see them go up to a ship, and Omega's like, "Let me try it my way. Let me try and be diplomatic." This Crosshair's like, "I'll kill half of the people here, and they won't
Before
know
they
that."
notice.
Yeah, and Omega's like, "Let me try this," and she ends up putting them in the bind of needing to get 30,000 credits. I thought it was really interesting seeing that dynamic of Crosshair immediately resorting to,
Violence.
I could just
Kill everyone.
Yeah.
And Omega still has, even after 2 seasons of this and seeing Omega's character growth, she still has that base purity and
Yeah.
optimism that's really run rampant through her character.
Yep.
But it's
Start to
also
finish.
it's
Yeah.
very reminiscent of Fee in last season, where that's the approach she would have taken, the less
Mm-hmm.
aggressively violent drawing attention approach.
Yep. And it's also similar to, Sid and all the things that Omega has learned working with Sid and sort of
Yeah.
Underworld and
Underworld,
let's
yeah.
make
Con
these
them.
deals,
Yeah.
let's con them, which I really like that coming back because it kind of
Yeah.
pulls on that second
If
season
Omega
a
does
lot.
not meet Hondo this season,
Yeah. The other thing that I was thinking about when I was watching that scene too is the fact that like Crosshair, he was in the Republic and then he immediately went to the Empire. He has not had the kind of rogue experience of being a mercenary with the batch
Yeah.
and running into these situations where you can bribe people, where you can con them, where you can try to buy passage and slip chain cones. He's always been in the like ruling
well,
Like,
Regime kind
e-
of.
yeah,
even
and
for
having-
his setup.
Having-
He doesn't need the change code. He's
Yep,
got an Imperial
exactly.
shuttle.
Yep.
Right. And so for her to be the one that thinks of the way to like get around that, I kind of like that because
Yep.
you can kind of see, I don't know, in that way, she almost has more experience than him
Yeah.
Mhm.
actually in the kind of underworld situation, which is
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
And
I-
it was a good joke. Oh, sorry.
Here. Okay. I feel like I absolutely just loved their dynamic the whole episode. Like it was in a way like some of the like little tropes you see of like she's very like sunshine and he's very like grumpy, and then you have like brother and sister type
Mhm.
thing, found
Yeah.
family stuff, and just like watching their dynamic for many reasons for me was just so fun. And I liked seeing him like almost walk away from her and be like, yeah, you're that's so dumb. Why are you wanting this dog? And the whole time I wanted to see like Crosshair, like just like pet the dog, kind of like a dad that's like, I don't want a dog. And then he just loves on it so much. Like, I'm just waiting for that to happen. I was
It's
kind
gonna.
of expecting
It will happen.
and because I just loved when he like was gonna walk away and then was like, all right, fine. And like that just like kind of kept happening. And I feel like the name of this episode was so fitting too. Like they both had to try each other's way when it came down to it.
Mhm.
And I thought that was interesting for
Mhm.
sure. I feel like Crosshair kind of let her get away with a little more than I thought he might.
Yeah, he did.
But
Yeah.
I think him like almost walking away kind of showed that he was like, okay, no, I'm done with this. This is you're clearly have failed. But then he was like, oh, all right, I guess.
I also chalk up some of his behavior in regards to Omega as being like you know what? I'm just gonna see where this goes because if nothing else, I'll be entertained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
anything else, she'll be the distraction.
Yeah. I also think some of his behavior also has to do with the fact that like everything he has tried in the last 2 seasons has been an absolute failure.
Yeah.
Like complete and utter failure.
So like, why
And
not?
at least like I don't know if he's gonna be able to come up with something better. Like he clearly can shoot people. He knows that, but like I don't know if she comes up with something really random and crazy, maybe he can use it to his advantage. I don't know. 'Cause, like,
Yeah. I'm sure we'll get to this like in a hot second too. But speaking of him shooting stuff, I feel like he, at least before, could have taken out those people to get onto the ship faster than he did. So I feel like we're kind of seeing that like hand shakiness, like unsure
Mhm.
of everything that he's been going through
mhm.
come out in that.
Yeah.
Because they go back to the person or the stormtrooper that was like on top of, I don't know,
Mhm.
whatever
Mhm.
in that place a couple times. And like it takes him a little bit. And you think it would have happened sooner,
Mhm.
especially when he was bragging. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
also it's definitely a narrative
Yeah.
foreshadowing of where Crosshair's going to be later in the season.
Right,
Mhm.
and a lot of people have been talking about this, and it's something I was thinking about too when watching the last episode and this one. And I know the guys in the Dad Batch podcast were talking about it too, but a big theme of I think the Bad Batch series as a whole and the clones as a whole is like what are you or who are you as a person if what defined you is like wiped, or like what your main task was is just no longer a thing,
Yeah.
with the clones being soldiers
Yep.
for a war that is now over. Who are they? Like
Yep.
they're not soldiers anymore, so who are they? And I think for Crosshair, him having the tremors and losing his ability to be that expert marksman is going to be a central question. Like, okay,
Yeah.
who is he now that he's not just, I mean, with those, he's no longer useful to the Empire.
Yep.
Mhm.
And that was after he left the Bad Batch. They weren't getting anything from him when he was basically in prison in the lab.
Yeah.
So who is he now? He's
Yeah.
been rejected from his squad. He's been rejected from the Empire where he felt he still had a place.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
what's he gonna do now?
Well, and I think that kind of goes back to like what he said in the last episode when Omega wanted to break him out, and he was like, "No, I belong here."
Leave me.
Like he literally was like, "Leave me," and it wasn't just like "leave me," like you have a bad plan. It was also he said like, "I belong here.
He's
This
so
is where
dramatic.
I deserve to be." And I think that's to your point, Hunter, of just being like, I think he doesn't know what
Right.
he's
No.
supposed to be doing,
He
and
has
so it's
no
like
idea.
he has no idea because he thinks he belongs in prison. He betrayed his brothers. You've seen him kind of like, think back on that and, regret it in the way that he sent them messages in
Yep.
season 2. And like, he clearly has regrets, but he's not a soldier. He's not with the Empire. He doesn't have a higher purpose. And so I think that is going to be a main point of this season. And in some ways it already has been. We're 4 episodes in and we've spent
Yeah.
3 of them with Crosshair.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
we're
Which
definitely.
is more than last season.
Yes.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
making up for lost
Expensive
time.
And I'm stoked.
Yeah.
Roughly
Yeah.
300% more.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's an insane volume of Crosshair stuff. I did personally enjoy the joke once Omega's like, it's 3,000 credits, okay, and they turn around and start walking away, and Crosshair's like, are you joking? Like that was the best option you could
It
think
was
of. It's like
Yeah.
30,000 credits,
30,000, yeah.
which is, come to think of it, an obscene amount of money.
It is. Yeah.
Obscene.
Well,
Obscene.
in US dollars, but inflation could be terrible on that planet.
That's never
That
know.
is true.
Yeah.
We also don't really ever get a solid understanding of what a credit is.
It could be
Yeah.
like yen.
Yeah.
It could be
Well,
Yeah.
and I don't know when would be a good point to jump to this, Josh. So I don't want to
The
jump ahead.
exchange is 4.5 imperial credits to $1 US.
Oh my
Why
God.
do we know that?
Yeah.
There's
GitHub.
nothing.
Where can I
GitHub.
You said
exchange my money?
4.5.
Yeah, so it's approximately $6,666.67.
Okay.
So that is so many sixes that I'm kind of like, did Dave Filoni plan this?
But I know it was, yeah, so we get this obscene sum of money that they need to come up with. And what better way for them to come up with that money than Omega returning to her hustling roots back when, and scamming a incredibly large Trandoshan out of a huge sum of his money.
And he doesn't get angry.
Nuts.
That guy looked super similar to one that we saw in Clone Wars.
He did. with,
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
extra-
the scales and like the lizard eyes. Kinda.
Yeah.
we've been seeing a lot of
Yeah, those
soft
lizard eyes and the
Trandoshans
lizard
recently
person.
from like Mando season 3 and Sid. So
But, like,
seeing a
this-
Florida Trandoshan once again was nice.
It was, yeah.
I saw him and I just
Look,
like looked at Hunter.
He's just got lots of stuff to carry in his cargo pants.
Mm.
Yeah, clearly he's got
Trandoshan
30,000 credits to carry.
Yeah, so I actually really loved this from a writing perspective, where Omega kind of gets them into the situation where they have to get 30,000 credits, and then subsequently completely supplies that. Like even if it
Yeah.
gets taken from her, she's just like, yeah. And then I went and gambled it and won it, and it's like it's hilarious because you're like
Yeah.
you're going, oh my gosh, how are they gonna do this? Like, I remember thinking when I was watching the episode, like, are they gonna do like jobs for people? Is
They're
Crosshair
gonna
gonna
heist
have to-
it.
Yeah, like
Right.
what's gonna happen? Are they?
Is she
and
gonna
then-
sell him like the way that
Yeah,
she let go?
Yeah, exactly. And then she's just like, no, I'm just gonna like win some games. And
Gonna
it's just like
swindle these people.
so- it was
Yeah.
hilarious. Like it was just like, so she made this
Yeah.
deal and then she completely delivered on her ability to do that. And that's hysterical to me.
It's also
It's-
Crosshair's like indignation at it.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Great
your
little
plan.
So he's pissy about it, but at the same time, he's just like, all right, whatever. I guess I'll just hang out.
Yeah.
And then it works. Like it's like
Yeah.
what?
And
And-
in the
okay.
middle of these games, we get Mr. Imperial Officer, Garrison Lead, Big Boy,
Yeah.
going up, getting his drink for free, getting his taxes.
Yeah, okay.
He
What
was
is it
giving Sheriff of Nottingham.
I was
He
just
was.
was gonna say that. I was like absolute Nottingham vibes.
Such an awesome villain character, though, because
he did do it.
he walks into that cantina
Yep.
and you immediately hate him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, this dude is an absolute scumbag. I hate
Yeah,
Yes.
I would pay money to break his jaw.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Like
I
I,
don't
would
know-
see him
to
walk
punch
with
him.
sticks for the rest of his life.
I don't know what it was about him, but there was something, especially when I think back on it. He reminded me of Al from Toy Story 2 from Al's Toy Barn for some reason. Like the way that he like kind of like talks and is scummy and conducted. I don't know why. And maybe that's just like a weird thing that happened to me.
That is a very specific call.
That is so specific. I love it.
Al's Toy Barn?
I love
More
it.
Like Al's Imperial Shipyard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he had a lot of animals. in that
You just want to
shipyard.
punch him the whole time?
I mean, an interesting thing. I got a very similar vibe, weirdly enough, between him and God, what were they? The Zygerians.
Oh,
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I
with the
almost-
collection, like creating a menagerie.
I
Mhm.
almost
Mm.
expected to see some when they were trafficking all those animals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it definitely
Yeah.
was a weird thing for an Imperial to be doing, but within the realm of, we saw that he was just taxing everything
Yep.
left and right and finding
Mhm.
ways to get tips without
Yep.
doing
Yeah.
work, and we saw the the faults in having regional governors in the Imperial era, especially the
Yeah.
start of the Imperial era.
Yeah.
How they kind of are just let free to reign, do whatever they please,
Yep.
as long as quote unquote order is kept within
Yep.
where they're supposed
right.
to.
Yeah. And I thought that was kind of weird at first too. I was like, oh, that's interesting. That is this like their main thing? They just have a whole
dude.
bunch of exotic animals here. Like that seems
Mhm.
like an odd thing for Imperials to focus on. But the more I thought about it, it's like that's probably not their only shipyard. You know,
Yeah.
No.
Mhm.
that's
Well-
that just happened to be the area that they stumbled on.
Yeah, and I really did like how his whole thing throughout the whole episode was like, you can't be gambling, you pay a fine. You can't have a
Yep.
pet, you
Yep.
pay a fine. And
Pay a
he was just
fine.
like, he came back as this like just sleazy, like every time he'd do something, you're like, of course, I should have guessed it,
Yeah.
but also like gross.
And we
Like,
also
it-
saw, he had a good amount of forethought, because once Omega wins the game,
yeah.
the stormtroopers are like, all right, we're just going to arrest you now for
Yeah.
gambling.
Yeah.
And he's like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
I'll give you some money. Then you'll
Yeah.
pay me a fee of the money that you've earned previously.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that when you
Uh-huh.
come to get your animal back, you're just going to pay with the money that I originally gave you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so he gets more money at the end of the day,
Yep.
twice over.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's definitely a very smart
Well,
character.
kind of.
Yep.
yeah.
Relatively smart. within
Clearly,
the realm of being-
as far as Imperial officers go, this Imperial officer has a minor in accounting.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
does. Yeah.
He acts like a math major.
He does.
That came out way too quickly.
Oh man.
Wow.
I apologize.
Also, quick,
No, I
quick
don't. I don't.
headcanon, like mindset. Anytime I see Imperial officers dealing in trafficking in like rare animals or exotic animals, I always imagine it's them trying to buy favor in the Outer Rim with Tarkin, because
Oh.
he's the sector governor for the Outer Rim,
Mm.
and we know that Tarkin's a huge big game hunter.
Oh.
Like that is
I
his
know.
thing. There's a whole
I like
Vader
it.
comic arc where he's
Yeah.
hunting Vader to teach Vader a lesson.
I totally hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Could be.
Interesting.
And then we go to, let's see, she wins the game, and then we see Crosshair and Omega have a little discussion, and Crosshair's like, I see no need to go save
A dog.
Betcha. Apparently, Batcher.
It's Batcher
uh,
with an Australian accent.
You
Right.
betcha.
Yeah, betcha.
I thought it was Betcha as in like you betcha for the longest time, and I was
Oh my
doing
God.
research for this episode, and I kept seeing Batcher in like the description of what was going on. I was like, I don't know who on earth this is. Did they forget how to type Omega? Like they just use the adjective Batcher to describe a member of the Bad Batch.
It also makes it really funny that
oh
the
my
collective
God.
name for Bad Batch fans is Batchers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
right.
it absolutely was not my brightest moment. Also, just blank up searching Omega's animal friend in Bad Batch season 3, I got so many hits. Like she's had so many animal friends. There was Ruby the lizard. There's the
Yeah.
Rancor. There's like
Yeah.
so many creatures that she's
Yeah.
befriended over the course of the 3 seasons so far. But we see that divide, and we see Crosshair take the money and walk off, and Omega go to save Betcha.
Hey, wait! Don't
But-
forget about the kid who's just a
Oh
total
yeah,
Oh my gosh,
there's
the
the kid.
The kid that swindles them.
I'll take the
Kid is a
extra
total
5,000 credits from you. The 10,000. Then Crosshair takes one step forward. And he's like,
And
okay,
like
okay.
glares.
5,000.
I'd be like, oh.
Yeah, no,
I
so
love
he
how
had that little.
Crosshair's negotiation tactic
not.
is stand there and look scary,
I mean, fair
He's
enough.
good at it.
He
which is
yeah,
funnily enough also Wreckers.
Yeah.
so true.
Yeah. No. Oh, also, I want to bring that up. Crosshair's donut thing looked
Yeah.
really similar to the A-wing pilot helmets. in
It did.
Return of
I
the
thought the
Jedi.
same thing, and
I thought that too.
I don't think it's actually the same. I think it just looks similar.
Yeah.
I really like their outfits in general in this. I don't think we talked about
Also,
that yet. The-
Shout out to the whoever did the texture mapping for this episode. It is beautiful.
Yeah,
Quilted
there
pattern
was-
on Crosshair's jacket.
Yeah.
That's what I was just gonna comment on. All the texturing on their soft goods and stuff. It was really cool. It reminded me a lot of what we see in Andor.
Yeah.
And honestly, the
thinking
whole
about that,
design of
yeah.
that town felt very similar to grimy and downtrodden and
Mhm.
Yeah. It was very Ferrex.
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Yeah, it was like a mix of Ferrex and Lothal.
Yeah.
Yes, it reminded me
Yeah.
of Rebels a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we see, we touched on the giant animal menagerie compound, and eventually, not after too long, Crosshairs comes back. I'll help you, but my skills are being wasted here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He's very much a unwilling participant in helping Omega because he knows, admit it or not, Omega is his help to get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't leave her.
No. Well, and I really like that, this episode really juxtaposes the idea of in the last episode, or maybe it was 2 episodes ago, them talking where he was like, "You're too trusting," and she's like, "You're not trusting enough." And it kind
Yeah.
of shows their differences in, he wants to resort to violence and she would like to befriend everyone. And there's a situation in which both of them are applicable.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see her make some moves in this episode that are like, wow, good job, Omega. That was a good call. That was better than his.
Yeah.
But yet, at the end of it, him coming back and saying, hey, I need to use my skills. And that ends up being the thing that does get used.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I like having that juxtaposition where it's like nobody's wrong necessarily, but I know it kind of plays on both of their strengths. So
Mhm.
I'll address this Facebook comment. I think, sort of, I was saying right at the beginning, it was a side quest, but not a filler.
Yeah.
yeah.
It,
Yeah.
It had that side
more-
quest aspect, but it didn't take up the whole episode.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The end of the side quest and the episode still had some to continue.
Yeah.
Weird allegory. This is what I wish Canto Bite was in The Last Jedi. It is a side quest. It is
Sure.
them having to do a thing to get to a thing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but then they actually get I find another way around it that still gets them their end goal, because the goal is just to get off planet and to get somewhere they can get in contact
Yeah.
with Wrecker and
Yeah.
Hunter.
Yeah.
I get you. I have very
And we just
feelings about Cano
don't
Bite.
get that. So
Yeah.
But this definitely continues. We discussed it already, but this definitely continues the momentum that
Yeah.
the first 3 episodes.
we are
episodes had
Yeah.
very
full
well.
steam ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was very concerned that this would kind of have that same jump off feeling where a lot of momentum in the first 3 in the opener, and then it kind of comes to a
Slowed.
standstill, and we get these
Yeah.
episodes where it's kind of not nothing happens, but things that don't pertain
Yeah,
to the overall large arc of the story.
I think a big difference between this and an episode that I would call filler, and not that I always dislike filler either. I freaking love the Droid Bar episode from The Mandalorian season 3, and I know I'm in the minority there. But I think a big difference between an episode like this and a quote unquote filler episode is that a lot of times filler episodes just sort of ignore the overall
Mhm.
story arc,
Yep.
even if it might be bookended by
Yeah.
something that is relevant to it.
Right.
This episode, the whole goal of everything they were doing was to continue what they were doing at the end of episode.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
because
kind of resolution tied it up.
yeah, because even like any story, like if you think about a book or a show or anything where it's like, hey, we're trying to escape, and what hardships do we run into trying to escape? This is their hardship. And so it's not necessarily filler, it's just, I mean, it's like, here's a hardship, here's what you have to go through, here's what you have to do in order to accomplish your end goal. You know, it's following along that story in an exposition kind of way.
I also think it's visually supposed to be a way of showing us where these characters are in terms of like emotionally and mentally and their well-being. Because even like, you know, as they're escaping, you know, Tantus, you know, Crosshair's not missing his shots. He's dealing punishment left and right. But in this episode, he's starting to wear and tear a little bit. He's missing shots he normally would have been making the last season.
He did miss that opening shot on the Tantus escape.
Yeah.
where
He did,
shot.
but that's one missed shot.
Yeah, versus the multiples in the final.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So like I think it's gonna build towards where we're headed later in this season, where it shows that like, hey, he's gonna have to adapt out of that sharpshooter mentality because he can't be that anymore.
And it also shows his unsureness, how unsure he is in his current role. You know, it's showing that his foundation, as we talked about earlier, with what the Bad Batch is, what his identity was, has now been rocked.
Yeah, I think that, and I don't mean to jump ahead here. I mean, we're almost there.
We're basically at the end.
Yeah. Can we talk? Are we just going to talk about the end now?
All right, sure.
There's some cool creatures. We see
They
some
escape.
Easter eggs with the rat. What I assume
There's a
the
Jurassic
rats
Park run of dinosaurs that run over people.
Amazing.
The giant ship
mine
from the
is.
poster escapes.
Yep.
And then we have the biggest surprise of the episode to be, which was after they jumped to hyperspace, the credits didn't roll.
Yeah.
We got more time with these characters, and we actually resolved the main piece. Like, they're still ended on, you know, an emotional cliffhanger. There's more questions to have, but we had what I think is just a great formula for an episode. We had character moments. We had a main overall arc that occurred, still contributed to the overall story, kept momentum going forward. And we get to just another example of Crosshair not having faith. You know, you don't know if they're going to be there. And Omega's unwavering ability to believe in her family.
That's what I was just going to bring up and why I asked if we were going to jump to talking about the end, because to me, that is, what's that? That is that's the most obvious point where he is so timid and unsure and nervous about how things are going to be going when he meets back up with his old squad mates. Omega races down the ramp, runs into Wrecker's arms, runs into Hunter's arm, and then Crosshair kind of hangs back, isn't even there initially, and then sort of just slowly moseys down the ramp, and then just stands there, doesn't approach, and then like we basically won't even look him in the eye.
And his whole carrying himself is very like, okay, what's next?
But even like, I like when they're approaching, like his main thing that he's talking to Omega about is not that he thinks that, like, what if the batch doesn't want to see me? What he's saying is, what if the batch is dead? And I kind of like that his emphasis there is still almost on the feasibility of things. Like throughout the whole episode, he's talking about, we can't do that. That's not possible. His whole character arc has been about kind of feasibility, what is likely. And even like when you get back to like you don't even know what he thinks about like seeing the batch. His first thing is like, you don't even know they're alive. Like, what if they're not alive? Like, what if they're dead? And like, I like that he is timid to come down and see them, but I do like that his first thing that it almost seems he's worried that they're not alive, and he's trying to prepare her for it. And that's kind of like, it's an interesting thing where it's like, you kind of expect him to be like, I don't want to see them. And like, he probably doesn't, but his first thing he says is, what if they're dead?
It feels like something Tech would say.
It does. Yeah.
It's a logical, hey, it's been 150 plus days. We don't know.
We don't know. And I like that because I do see that as being timid to see them, because I agree. He's probably really, he can't look them in the eye. He doesn't want to see it. But I also see it as like he might be worried that they're dead. He's clearly heard about Tech from Omega. I mean, that's clearly what's happened, and he's
Yep.
probably worried they're dead.
Well,
Yeah.
and in response to this Facebook question of will they fight or argue or like take Crosshair back, I think that like they're, I mean, given that Tech died, like partly to save this guy, nobody's gonna just happily be like, "Yay, Crosshair," because it cost them a lot. So I think that we're
Yeah.
gonna see at least some kind of harsh words.
There's gonna be
maybe
some growing pains.
Yeah.
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 Readmitting, because they've had these conversations before. At the end of season 1,
Yep.
this was a huge point. Crosshair chose
Yeah.
not to leave with the bat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we had an entire season where we saw Crosshair like 4 times.
Yep.
But like Crosshair's time with the Batch, that relationship is definitely at a very strained point. And
Yeah.
between
Yeah.
them last seeing each other, the Batch has changed drastically.
Yeah.
Echo's gone off to help with Rex. Tech's
Yeah.
passed away. Omega got captured. There's so much that's changed.
Yeah.
And there's definitely gonna be some growing pains.
Yep.
with-
And even with him, there's a lot that's changed. I mean, since last
Yeah.
I saw him, he was full send, let's go Empire, and
Yeah.
now he's
Been
shot
tortured
Imperial
and-
officers, been tortured. Yeah, exactly, and had experiments done on him and escaped, and
Yeah.
has completely turned coded. So
Yeah. I
Yep,
mean,
absolutely.
I don't normally like to make visual predictions, but I'm pretty sure at some point in the next episode we're going to see Wrecker holding Crosshair up against a wall to some extent. Either it's going to be like a pick him up by the like collar thing to put him against the wall, or it's going to be a shot of him like pinning him head to the wall.
Well,
Yeah.
we saw Wrecker's eyes narrowed in.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wrecker was mad.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would be almost surprised if we saw that, because unless Wrecker is in battle mode,
Mhm.
he wouldn't hurt a fly.
yeah.
I
That's-
see
that's
the
fair.
Batch and especially Wrecker just like wanting to ignore him.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thing is, I don't think that's going to be an emotion they're able to fully do, because we think about Wrecker. Wrecker does not like things that just irritate him.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, he won't hurt a fly, but we've seen him time and time again where he'll be like, grumbling about the environment they're in, and he'll intentionally kick stuff that are in his way, like even if he's in the background,
Yeah.
right?
yeah,
So I could totally see him being like, this is like it might be what we were saying on how much the Batch has changed. He might personally hold
yeah,
Crosshair at least indirectly responsible
Yeah.
for like Tech's death, because arguably Tech wouldn't have been in the position they
Yeah.
were in
Yeah.
if they'd had a sharpshooter.
Yeah. Well, and like I think 2 things. I think one is that Omega creates a situation in which you can't ignore him,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
also that you can't be too mean to him,
Right,
because
'cause
she'll
she'll get
jump in
upset.
and she'll be
Yeah.
like, "No, don't hurt him.
Yeah.
He's my friend.
He's
and
friendly.
Yeah.
He helped
Right.
me," and she'll do that.
Yeah.
But I
He
also
saved
kind of-
Betcha.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and like I
exactly.
kind of also sort of predict they might skip time, and we may not be able to
Really?
see
No.
the initial response. I don't know, because like they do that sometimes in this show where they'll set up something and then they'll like pick up at a slightly different time, and you'll just have to kind of fill in what happened. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did that either. But
that would-
I think whatever happens, Omega will buffer.
Oh,
Yeah.
we totally will.
I feel like that would kind of suck if they did that, because I
do
feel
too.
like I didn't
Yeah.
get to say this, but I feel like a lot of this episode, like you see so much of their character and like not super huge development, but like a lot of like little changes. And I think that's like really important to like talking about, like what Hunter said, like who they are now and like how they get through this next time period.
Yeah.
Like I feel like Bad Batch is like almost that look into like how the Empire really started to take root, obviously because of like when we start the first season. And now by season 3, I mean, this guy that we see, right, I forget his name, the officer man, is like running this town, and he like
Yeah.
is doing everything. And yeah, so I feel like it would kind of like, if they did skip time, I feel like it would almost be a disservice to like
Yeah.
them figuring stuff out, because obviously so many, I mean, I know there's less and less obviously, but so many clones are still like in the mode Crosshair was in, like whether you want to say he had his chip, had a new chip, like whatever.
Yeah.
Like either way, they're
Yeah.
still like part of the Empire, but
I
they
mean-
were also part
like
of it, at
just
one point.
think about where Cody was in season 2.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Where, like he was still Empire, but he was standing there being like, "Did we make a mistake?"
Yeah.
And
It's like it almost wears off.
one, it wears off, but also that like even under the chip, there's still some degree of intentional obeying of the impulse from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I wonder how, like, if we're gonna get, like, I really hope we get more of this, because like when I went and watched it at LFL, we had a mini panel afterwards. And one of the things that was talked about from one of the producers was that this is quintessentially a clone story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of that is also how does that affect the other clones that we
Yep.
see later in the timeline?
Mhm.
And I think we really I'm not gonna say we're owed anything as fans, but it would be the kind of thing where I would hope to see Lucasfilm give us closure on where these clones end their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First,
Yep.
Exactly. It
right?
Yeah, it reminds me a lot. I don't know if it's because of some of the conversations I've had very recently, and now we're talking about this, but like it reminds me a lot of like people who go into the military right out of high school, and then after that, you know, however long they stay in, and I'm talking about people who it's not like a lifelong thing for them.
But they do like 1 or 2
They have
contracts.
to, like however long, like they have to figure out who they are outside of everything after that. Like
Yeah.
I've known lots of people in it, or like I hear about lots of people in it, and I feel like it's obviously not exactly the same concept, but like very similar in that, like, what do I do now? Like, how many rules am I going to follow? You know, like you had so many years where like you have to have everything in perfect order in your room and make your bed, and like, do I still follow that afterwards? Or like, that's a
Right.
small
And
example,
then
but like
cutting forward in like the timeline to where we see in Kenobi where there is a 501st clone sitting begging,
Yeah.
yeah,
and it's like, you know, is this the future that most of the clones are going to be facing?
right.
Yeah. Yeah, I really hope they answer or at least address that question.
Yeah.
Like even if it's not like a decisive end for all of the clones, it's the same. I hope they show some like different ulterior paths that different ones of them take.
Right.
That you can picture it. And it's not just like, oh no, they're all destined to the Kenobi clone, because that would just be
That'd be
so sad.
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So sad. I would cry.
Yeah.
Well, within the frame of Bad Batch episodes,
Yep.
what would you guys rate episode 4 of season 3?
Within the lens of Bad Batch, I'd give it probably like a 7, maybe a 6. But that's not because it's a bad episode. It's just because it's like, if you cut out a decent chunk of the middle, they still end up getting a resolution that would have happened in some way anyways.
I gave it an 8.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for all of the Bad Batch episodes we've had, there have been a lot of filler ones where I've been like,
Oh yeah.
enjoyed them, but like also, where's the plot? Where's the character development? And this one had plot, it had character development, it was entertaining.
It ends on a really dramatic note.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I give it an 8.
Yeah. That's why I
Yeah.
feel like it's not like totally a filler episode. I think of it more as like the first example that comes to mind is like thinking about like the 4th and 5th Harry Potter books or movies. Like they're filler, but also lots of things are happening and people are developing and they're still like going towards something, if that makes sense. Like I almost think
Yeah.
about it in a obviously much shorter sense, but like things are still moving along, but it's also not
Yeah.
like the very resolution.
Mhm.
True. Yeah.
I think I'd give it a 9, partially because
Crosshairs.
it's Crosshair. And I'll give a 9 to most things that have Crosshair, or a 10. And since there's not a lot of Crosshair in the 3 seasons of the Bad Batch, I'll give it a 9, but also for the same reasons that everyone else.
I feel
I
like
think
give
there's this episode definitely has almost everything that I'd want from the Bad Batch in a
Yeah.
Bad Batch episode, from a writing perspective of a young adult show. I think it classifies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It fills all of those things
Yeah.
very well.
Yeah.
And you know, the pacing was pretty solid too. I think
Yeah.
Mhm.
it definitely leads up and tease a great great ability. You know, I'm waiting for next week to see if it can again does it
I mean,
continue this momentum.
So far, every episode has been like, can't wait to see what the next
Yeah.
one does.
Yep.
They're doing a
Which
very
I
good
can't say was the case for last season.
Yeah.
Because last season I was kind of like, well, I know based on announced titles that these 6 episodes are going to be the ones that are the most dramatic. So these other 6 are like, all right.
Yeah, we got to a point where we were guessing when Crosshair would come back because those would be good episodes.
We got to a point of guessing if we were going to see a return of Cody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I have no idea what the
Yeah.
like. We made a lot of assumptions about what the titles meant.
Yep.
And we have already seen Crosshair and Omega.
Yep.
escape
Yeah.
Atlantis,
Yep.
and we have already seen them reunited with Hunter and
And
Wrecker,
Wrecker.
Yep.
which are things that I didn't expect to see until
The
at
end.
the very, very
Yep.
soonest,
Yeah.
the mid-season finale.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
Yep.
we are a quarter of the way through the episodes, and it's already covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Which I love.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's covered a lot of ground, but also within the frame of everything people are expecting from this season.
Yeah.
In hindsight, it's one of those things where you're like, okay, we need to have bounty hunters because Hemlock talks in this episode. Let's send our contacts. Let's notify them we need to get Omega.
Yeah.
We know we're gonna have the bounty hunters chasing Omega. We know we're gonna have more of Rex and
Yep.
hopefully other clones. Hopefully the
We
assault
know
on
we're
Tantus.
getting Wolf at some point.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
when you look at it in that frame of how much we're expecting,
Yep.
them
Yeah.
reuniting in 4 episodes is
Yeah,
like
makes sense.
just enough where you're like, this makes sense.
Yep.
Any
Yeah.
more, I'd feel like they're dragging.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything
So-
else would start to feel rushed.
And it's gonna
Yeah.
ultimately it's gonna be what, like, we're only gonna know this when we get towards the tail end of the season, but it's gonna be what are the 4 major arcs of this season.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because clearly arc 1 is kind of resolved now. It's the
Yep.
Yeah.
escape of Omega and Crosshair and the reuniting with Hunter and Wrecker.
Yep.
So next arc is probably going to be something tied to the reintegration of Crosshair to the Batch,
Yeah.
and maybe
I
the
think
larger
it's going to
clone
be that
presence.
Juggernaut arc.
Yeah,
Mm.
I think Juggernaut's coming up. If not next episode
Yeah.
after.
Yep.
Yeah, and one of the episodes is called Juggernaut. I forget
Yeah.
what. I think maybe that was the mid-season finale.
I think there's
Um,
2 sets of mid-season. There's like a 2 tribe
Yeah.
Yeah, they
season
would too.
double episode things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I can definitely see that. And
Yeah.
any closing thoughts pertaining to this episode or things that we might expect next week? We've definitely covered a lot of ground already. In that part of
Nothing
it, but-
other than that I am still extremely pumped.
Yes.
I am too.
Yeah. I this is very heavy excitement levels for
Yeah.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm super excited, and I can't believe that they haven't been making more money gambling with Omega before. They should have. But yeah. Very
Yeah,
excited.
so our next episode is March 6th, and that is The Return,
Mm.
which I imagine will be the reintegration
Yeah.
episode. And then on the 13th, we get our double episode, Infiltration and Extraction,
That's probably going to be the
which could be our Wolf episode.
Who
Yeah.
knows? Yeah.
Yeah.
could be Delta Squad from the dead.
Could
Could
be.
be Delta Squad.
Awesome. Well, just a little bit of time. A huge shout out to our patron supporters. They are very familiar with our faces and our voices. Sadly,
Again, we're sorry.
thank you guys for your support. We would not be doing this without you. We love being able to have this venue to be able to just speak our minds and talk about the new Star Wars stuff. So thank you guys for the constant support. It's been great. If you guys want to follow us, you can find us on Instagram at Star Wars Stuff Podcast sometime. You can find us
Maybe.
on Twitter at Stuff Pod. And of course, as we just talked about, you can also become a Patreon supporter. We greatly appreciate it. And you can find
see
people
more of
here.
us.
See more of us, except we curse more.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. You can find us on Instagram. Someone else on TikTok, if that's even used anymore. I don't know. We got
I exist on it. I don't do anything with it.
yeah, it's just claiming the usernames.
Yeah.
Uh,
All of us are Blue Harvest.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're all Blue
Yeah.
Harvest, so
Yeah.
please go give us a follow. we want follows for our Chewbacca costume.
That's right.
Yes.
Our collective one. Yeah.
For the collective.
Yes,
We'll
our
all
collective.
be inside one
We
Chewbacca
are
costume.
We're all
Chewbacca.
donating
Oh,
here.
no.
Yeah.
Everyone on
Chewbacca.
each other's shoulders to make a really tall Wookiee.
That's
So some
this
people have
is our We Are Groot now, isn't
We
it?
like the
Yeah,
way-
this
We are
is-
Chewbacca.
we could all
Well,
make
like
a full
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers into Chewbacca.
Yes,
Mecha
exactly.
Chewbacca.
Chewbacca Zoid.
Perfect.
Well, again, thank you guys so much. And from all of us at the Star Wars Stuff Podcast, may the Force be with you always.